Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast that delves deep into the culture of complexities of cults and human trafficking. I'm your host, Anonymous Andrew. Each week, we explore different facets of cult life and human trafficking, from the psychological manipulation to the brave stories of those who have escaped.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melody. I'm Andrew's co-host. Having experienced the depth of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I'm here as an advocate for fellow survivors. My journey has inspired me to help others who find themselves in similar situations. This podcast is committed to respecting our guests' privacy. To ensure their comfort and safety, we offer them the option to remain anonymous.
Additionally, we would like to include a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Cultimatum or its affiliates. Cultimatum is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information shared by our hosts and guests. The content discussed on this podcast is based on personal experiences, opinions, and speculation, and should not be construed as professional services or advice. Neither the host nor the guest are assuming liability for any misuse or reliance on the information presented. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and listeners are encouraged to conduct their own research and seek professional advice where appropriate.
Before we dive into today's episode, we want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may explore explicit and potentially disturbing topics such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults. My name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me is my co-host, Melody. Hi, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. We have got a guest today. We've got our second human trafficking survivor that has been brave enough to come on and share her story with us. Her name is Suzanne, and she is the founder of a Facebook support group called Modern Day Slavery, Creating Awareness USA. Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So just for the audience, I've been chasing Suzanne for a couple of weeks, and from various reasons, and this happens very regularly in scheduling podcasts. People have conflicting schedules, but we finally got Suzanne, and I am delighted that she's here. So Suzanne, our podcast is about human trafficking and cults, but you're our only second human trafficking survivor, and we're very excited. I'm sorry that you have to come on and tell your story, but we would love to hear your story and any message that you have about the human trafficking world. So take it from there.
Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to address is that slavery was never, ever abolished on December 18, 1865. You know, the plantations only got bigger. I was a single mother when this situation happened to me. I was a single mother of a 9-year-old little boy. I had at that time I had no idea that my mother had married into, I guess, what you would call a brotherhood. My grandmother was worth millions of dollars, and for what I've learned, being that this happened to me 3.5 years ago. My grandmother was leaving my uncle, and my mother. I'm guessing my mother's husband wasn't very happy about that, and I was basically traded out into the human trafficking ring to pay for my grandmother and my uncle's demise.
How old were you at that point?
I was 39 years old. You know, that's the thing. People just assume, you know, it's a younger type of situation. Anyone could be a victim of modern day slavery, any age, gender, or race. Everybody's trafficking situation is different.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Everybody
True.
has their own experience, stories, and trauma. And that's why we're having you on. We'd like to hear your perspective and what happened to you. So your mother and grandmother sold you to the Brotherhood? Do I understand?
No, what happened was my mother married a man. Now, well, I mean, first of all, this man molested me when I was 13 years old. This man had it out for me for basically my whole life. I refused to be with him, and I guess maybe my uncle wasn't treating him the way he felt that he should have been treated. And like I said, my grandmother was leaving my uncle. He was 82nd Airborne, fought for our country, and came home and was murdered basically by organized crime. This is organized crime that happened to me. I was traded out to pay for my grandmother and my uncle's demise.
Can you explain that further? Because I'm a little, I don't know if Andrew's following. Maybe it's just me. I'm a little bit confused. So can you explain exactly what you mean by that?
Okay, well, I mean, it's something I learned over the last couple of years. I didn't know what was going on right away. I really didn't understand what was going on. My uncle and my grandmother both, just passed away, right? I mean, literally passed away while all of this was going on, while I was being trafficked.
Okay. So they passed away, your grandmother and your uncle.
Yes, and both of them had all the symptoms of ricin poisoning, and I have been poisoned multiple times by these gang stalkers since I escaped the trafficking ring. It's just everything I've put together,
So when you say that I forget how you phrased it, but so you weren't sold. How did they convince you or force you to be trafficked?
I was sold, and that's the thing. What happened was while all this was going on, I was being groomed online by a man, by my trafficker who was working right along with my mother's husband.
And was that someone you knew?
Well, I met him online.
Oh, okay.
He groomed me online. It was all a setup, is what it was.
Okay.
To earn my trust.
Okay, so you did not know that he knew your mother's husband?
Not at the time, no.
Okay, and but they were in cahoots to do this.
Yes, and I mean, the only reason why I know what I know is because I lived as long as I did. In my group, Modern Day Slavery, I have recordings of a few of the gang stalkers admitting that my mother's husband, offered them rewards at trafficking houses to help get rid of me. Because their attempt on my life from the night I escaped my trafficker, when I called the police, the local judge in East Montgomery County, Texas, threw me in a mental hospital to keep me quiet.
Do you be careful how you answer this? Do you think he was corrupt?
The judge?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely okay. Corrupt.
Okay.
I had some issues with him in the past as well. Yes, definitely corrupt.
So I'm going to ask a very difficult, hard question because I'm just trying to put the puzzle together. So you were being groomed to do what? To perform sexual?
Mm-mm.
No.
I'm sorry if I'm not. I'm sorry if I'm coming across being difficult to understand this. Okay. When my trafficker was grooming me, we dated for a couple of months, and it's like everything's just all normal. Before I knew it, time was passing away, weeks were passing away. He would come home with the same fountain drinks, claiming he enjoyed, drinking the same thing as me. Basically, I was being drugged, and before I knew it, I had went to go visit him at his RV, and I all of a sudden, he's putting plywood on the windows, and I'm being chained up inside of it. I was being drugged in that RV probably for a good couple of months. It took a while for me to realize what was going on. I remember at one point I tried to, I saw the chain dangling on the door while I heard it, and I peeked around the corner, and I'm guessing the drugs they were giving me, I kind of developed a tolerance for, and I'm looking around the corner, and I see a whole van, like a car full of men. They were carpooling these men to my location, and trafficking me out.
So that's what I was asking before. When you say traffic it out, you were taught you were chained inside a trailer, and these men came in and had their way with you?
Basically.
Okay, that's
Wow.
what I was trying to find out. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just a little
No,
nervous.
Suzanne, do not be sorry.
It's a complicated story, honey. We're just trying to follow. It's yeah, it's it sounds like you've been through a lot. So
And
yeah,
no,
we have empathy for that, and we're just trying to understand. But wow, that's crazy.
so you were being drugged. I'm guessing from what I understand, they use an addictive drug like heroin or something. So you're addicted, and you. So I don't. Do you know what drugs they used?
Well, I'm guessing it was a memory drug because luckily, I guess for my own mental, you know, I don't remember. There's a lot I don't
So
remember.
it could have been it could have been a date rape drug, a roofie or
Mm,
whatever they're called.
yeah.
Possibly and possibly methamphetamines, you know. I do remember a situation where my trafficker had stepped out for a minute and I grabbed his cell phone. And that was when I realized something really is not right here because there was a video that was actually playing and was on the main screen and I saw myself laying
Mm,
there and my eyes were like drawn towards the back of my head and I may be kind of giggling a little bit, but there was like at least 4 or 5 men surrounding my body. And then of course he runs back in there, grabs the phone out of my hand and claims that I never saw nothing. And then he was about a 200-pound guy. He put his elbows down on my ribs and literally cracked all of them so I wouldn't be able, I
mm,
guess, to get up and move around anymore at that point.
wow.
Yeah.
Can you guesstimate how long this went on for?
Oh,
Months, years?
a couple of months. I would say a couple of months because I remember all of a sudden I'm in this hospital around Christmas time. And this would have been 2020.
So you escaped?
I escaped. I filed a report, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about. You know, you think calling the police, you know, you call the police, they're there to serve and protect. Well, all of my reports got swept under the rug, every one of them. Calling the police was probably the worst mistake I ever did. I I I would like to let your guests know that if you're ever in a situation like mine, where you're able to escape your trafficker, I would suggest, you know, getting a hold of someone you trust to look over the situation where you have eyes on you because these people will try to cover it up right away. They will try to kill you. These people have been trying to kill me since the night I got away.
Okay, let's talk about that. So besides the fact that you went through many months or if not a year of being drugged with various types of drugs, you did suffer a stroke. Is that correct?
Oh yes. I mean, I've suffered a lot of physical problems from what
Well,
they've done to me.
right. And we'll get to that because I know that since you got away, you've been in semi hiding because they've come after you numerous times. And I do know some of your backstory.
Yes.
So,
How exactly did you escape? How were you able to do that, Suzanne?
Well, I'm not really sure if you really call an escape because I basically ran into the hands of the people that were, you know, like ready to, you know, there- how do I put it? There's no protocol for me. None. Um, I can remember, well, of course he left the chain off the door and I ran for it.
Mm.
I ran for it. I ran to a neighbor's house. You know, they called the police. Of course, at that point, I didn't tell the neighbors, you know, I think I've been trafficked. This is something that, I've kind of learned as I go that, this is what happened to me. But see, it was never spoke of again after that night. I was put in I was court ordered that the judge put a mental warrant on me that night. The hospital was prescribing me all kinds of medications. They claimed I had a bladder infection for like 30 days. I was taking a lot of the medicine because I was kind of like, something's not right here. Why am I here? Why am I here? So, I mean, and what actually one of the other patients looked at me and said, it's not your fault. You were just born into it. And then it just got more psycho after that.
So we interviewed the other human trafficking survivor, and she had a similar story. Every time that she got arrested or she was brought in before a judge, they did not treat her as a victim. They treated her as a prostitute, or they treated her as a criminal, and then she would go to jail, or so it sounds like this judge and the authorities didn't see you as a victim. They saw you as some crazy lady running around, because and I'm going to call out the government officials again. You're brought in front of the judge as a victim of human trafficking, and yet whether he was corrupt or not, he put you in a mental institution instead of giving you social services or giving you witness protection or getting you into a safe place. Am I correct?
Well, I think my like I said, everybody's trafficking situation is different. I never even saw that judge. I did learn though that my trafficker's cousin was the constable of East Montgomery County, Texas, allegedly. Like I said, this judge had court ordered, had court orders to kick my door open in my home to obtain paperwork for my trafficker. Just all kinds of weird things. I believe this is a trafficking ring, and these certain police officers, judges, and constables are part of all of this.
What were the court orders for, Suzanne?
Oh, there was one court order for my oldest son to obtain his birth certificate, and it said on there, any force necessary. I mean, just some crazy stuff. While I was in the hospital, my trafficker got my son has a mental disorder. He was able to scam my son out of some Social Security back pay money and bought him a car, and just a lot of greed and there's so much to the story. I don't think I have a lifetime to talk about it. They never wanted me to talk. They never wanted me to talk. That's why he put me in there that night. And it's been 3 years later, and I mean, I've had home invasions. I've been given hot shots like Marilyn Monroe. I was sleeping in my bed one night after I escaped, okay, and I got out of the hospital and all that. I believe I was supposed to die in that middle ward. I was supposed to die. I remember my mother's husband laughing after my uncle had passed away, 51 years old, healthy as an ox, laughing about him having a bladder infection. I believe that's something they use. I really believe they're putting ricin poisoning in the antibiotic. I'm just being honest with y'all. Yeah, there's a lot to the story, and you can't prove it. I can't see. I don't even think I can prove most of this. But I mean, there's absolutely there's no antidote. A medical examiner, even if he wasn't corrupt and affiliated, you cannot test ricin poisoning. And I really believe organized crime is using ricin poisoning to take out a lot of people. They do it in different organized ways. I've had the home invasions. I've talked myself out of being shot. The reason why I know that it was affiliated with the trafficking, my home invasion, because I woke up 3 days later. My animals were strangled in my bathtub. There was a Spanish guy laying next to me saying, man, you were supposed to die. I'm only here to make the phone calls. There's an officer waiting down the road. I'm not even supposed, yeah, I'm supposed to be on by now. And he gets up and runs out of the house. I find my animal strangled. Basically, they had a police officer, certain EMTs that were part of the organized crime ready to come on in and claim my overdose myself, which wouldn't have been true, but I survived it to talk about it. They broke in and they put a rag over my face. I guess it had chloroform on it, and I was out. I submitted a rape kit, everything. I mean, there was probably at least 5 or 6 different men's semen on that underwear. Never heard back from the county at all. Never heard back.
There's something not right here, Melody. Not with Susan's story, with just again with the government, with the authorities. Clearly, she's a victim of a very serious criminal activity, and nobody comes to her rescue. It just blows my mind, Suzanne. So I have this may be a tough question, and you do not have to answer this, but I applaud your bravery. But if you're being still stalked or sought after, or these guys are still after you, why are you being public about this?
Because I believe my story, my testimony.
Yeah. No, I'm not discounting your story. I'm just wondering, for your safety, why wouldn't you stay? I mean, you can come on and tell your story, but under a different name or a different, or are you standing up to the Goliath?
I get what you're saying. I've had a couple of people tell me that I reminded them of the modern day David, and at the time I didn't know who David was, but I know who David is now. I'm mainly doing this because I know my story can save somebody else's life, and what it amounts to is, I mean, none of us want to die. None of us want to die, it's a scary thing, but at this point, I'm not really afraid of them.
Good.
I mean, listen, I know what they're doing. And every time I've survived one of their attempts on my life, I had a rice poisoning a couple of months ago. A man was trying to earn my trust, and we were friends for about 4 months when he finally, went in for the kill. I believe he was offered, sex at a trafficking house in return for healing me. But one of the last attempts was in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I had to go to the emergency room. That's the thing. If I can't stop the bleeding, I'm not going. And if I'm going to go, I'm going to have someone looking after me. It is very important that your viewers know that if you are a targeted individual, you need to have somebody looking after you. Everything seemed to be okay. This nurse came in, her badge was backwards, gave me a flush of my IV. Whew. Okay. All of a sudden, my heart monitor goes from 70 to 200. Of course, I'm yelling. I'm a little nervous at that point. I'm not feeling right. My heart's beating out of my chest. This nurse, I can see her feet behind the curtain. She's just standing there. Literally standing there. Finally, I guess she was waiting for me to code. She finally went over and turned the monitor off and left the room. At that point, I started praying. I went to Jesus. I prayed for the strength to take that IV out of my arm and walk out of there. These people are infiltrated everywhere, in the hospitals, in the government. They're everywhere. All different forms, all different walks of life. I've had that happen to me a few times in a hospital. One time I said I was a traffic victim. I got tackled to the ground by security.
By the way, I just got to notice that we have to wrap this up in less than 10 minutes. At any point, did you hire either an attorney, maybe a private investigator, or did you find somebody maybe in social work that you trusted that could
I never could find anybody. I tried. And the local FBI in Houston, blocked me. The human trafficking hotline blocked me. Basically, that's why I created Modern Day Slavery, my group, Awareness in USA. So people can come together and, have a support, at least have someone to talk to about what's going on. Because this is a really big problem. Really big problem. We got hundreds of thousands of children being trafficked by CPS right here in America. I mean,
I'm on your group now. You have 1,600 members in your group, which is phenomenal. That's quite a feature. So, okay. So, well, I think we need to do a part 2. I'd like you to come back and we'll talk some more about this. But to wrap up this episode, can you give any advice to somebody who is, what are the signs, the red flags that you're being groomed? Let's say somebody's talking to somebody on Facebook, or they're talking to somebody on whatever, a social media account. What are some of the red flags that you didn't see then, but now looking back, were indicators that you were being groomed?
That's the problem. There's no real indication when they're grooming you, romantically. There's none. Absolutely none. There's none. I wish I could, offer, that type of information to help save somebody before it happens to them. All I can really do is offer information that can help prolong your life or possibly save your life for what I have gone through. I mean, with all the attempts on my life. They have been, listen, these cowards have been trying to shut me up since the night I escaped. And all they've done by the Lord pulling me through each time, I'm still alive today. They snitched on themselves. And hopefully my story will save someone's life that you love, or save your life. So, yeah.
Suzanne, I can't begin to thank you for your bravery and coming forth with your story. I just find it disgusting, number one, but the fact that you're willing to not only start a Facebook group to help others, but that you're willing to come on here and tell your story. We do have to wrap this up because they'll interrupt the recording.
Okay.
But I'd like for you to come back for a second part. We'll dive a little deeper into maybe some of the tactics they used. There has to be some sort of again, like you said, everybody's story is different, and trafficking is done all around the world, and it can be a child, it could be an adult, but you have the experience, and I'd like to try to get a second episode with you, and let's try to dive a little deeper into this. So
yeah, I definitely have a lot more things to talk about, how they're literally assassinating people.
Yeah.
And I've been through it and I survived it. And I really would like to tell my members in Modern Day Slavery about it. Yeah. And your
podcast,
your viewer.
Audience. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I obviously this is a difficult story to share and to tell, and we just appreciate your openness, and your bravery and your honesty and coming on to share such a difficult story with us.
And I appreciate you allowing me to tell it.
Oh no, it is. I am honored that you wanted to come on, and so all right. And Suzanne and I are in touch during the week. So Suzanne, I'll reach out to you. We'll set up a second episode. Thank you again so much for coming on here.
Thank you. You have a wonderful night.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you too.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye. We want to thank Suzanne so much for her bravery and coming forward and sharing her story with us. And we appreciate it. And we appreciate having another human trafficking survivor come forward to share their stories, because we know that that is not an easy thing for cult survivors or the human trafficking survivors. It's difficult to come forward and share your stories. And I'm going to throw it to Andrew now. I think he wants to do a little shout out to try to see if we can get more people that might be interested in coming on the show.
Yeah, I first thank you, Suzanne, very much. And when Melody and I were putting this podcast together, and it was primarily on cults, that's when I stumbled on Suzanne's Facebook group. And I had known about human trafficking, and I said, maybe we should incorporate that into the podcast.
Yes.
And so Melody agreed, and so even though it's Cultimated podcast, but it's the culture of cult and human trafficking. But in the beginning, we just weren't getting any human trafficking survivors to come forward.
Correct.
And that's understandable. If you get out of a cult, and somebody like Melody, who's been out for quite a while, even though she still has post-traumatic stress from some of it, she can come on and not be afraid that she's going to get blowback.
Right.
I remember you talking.
Sometimes.
I remember you saying that for the first 6 months you were just completely paranoid. You quit your job because you couldn't work on Saturdays. You were always looking over your shoulder. So I'm not taking away from the trauma.
Yeah.
But you're here. You are co-host of a podcast on cults.
Yes. No, I'm stepping forward.
A human trafficking survivor. And if you listen to Suzanne's story, many of them, so in cults, I guess this might be where one of the main differences between a cult and a human trafficking organization. The cults, I don't think you become property. I might be understating that. I know. I might be understating that. You're forced into labor. You have to do certain things, but people can literally walk away. I'm thinking about the gentleman we recorded. Help me out. The one from British Columbia, where at 14 years old, you did that nice graphic on. Yeah, Richard. He just walked. 14 years old. He took a shoebox and he walked away, and nobody went looking for him, and nobody came after him. So that's the point I'm trying to make.
Depends
in
on the cult.
Human trafficking. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. But in the human trafficking world, if they get their claws into you and you're making money for them, and they've already invested drugs and time, and you're their property.
Yes.
And you're also dealing with organized crime, cartels, and high-level criminals, and they're not going to just let their prize possession walk away sometimes. So Suzanne's story was an example of they're not happy that she walked away. And so the point is, we get that for human traffickers to come forward, but let's keep in mind, and you're going to hear an interview in a couple of weeks where a gentleman from a cult came on, but he wants his voice changed. So we will do anything that we can to obscure your anonymity, to make sure that we'll change your voice.
Can use a fake name.
Of course, there's no video, so change your name so you can virtually become. Nobody will know who you are. So the point I'm getting at here, we need more human trafficking survivors to come forward. I think we have one more booked.
Do we, or
am I mistaken?
I'm not sure. I would have to double
we'll have to check into that.
But certainly, yes, we're willing to work with you, and we're willing to, to some degree, I guess I'm going to say bend over backwards to get you on the show to hear your story. Yeah. If you're willing to come on and you're ready to share your story, we're ready to give you that platform, and we'll
work with you. Right.
Yes. We will work with you, and
we'll work.
Whatever boundaries you want to set, we're willing to respect that, and we're willing to make sure that people don't know who you are, but you can still share your story if you want to. And I don't want to forget this either. for any of you out there that might be listening, that might be a human trafficking survivor, Suzanne does also have that Facebook support group, Modern Day Slavery, Creating Awareness USA. On Facebook, you can go and join her group as well. And that's important. I'm just going to reiterate that in the name of the group for anybody out there who might be interested in joining her group.
And speaking of her group, she is the moderator and administrator and creator of that group. And I would imagine, I'm not making assumptions, but that many of her followers will be listening to this episode.
Right.
So we welcome you. And if anybody who listens to Suzanne's story is in Suzanne's group, if you want to talk to Suzanne first or come straight to us, all of our information is in the show notes. You can reach out to Melody or I, or if you want to talk to Suzanne first and ask her what it was like to tell the story on a podcast, maybe you're not sure, talk to Suzanne and she'll guide you through it. Getting Suzanne on the podcast was not easy. There was almost a month worth of trying to schedule her to get in there. It was just a lot of scheduling conflicts, and there were a couple of times she wasn't feeling well, so she wasn't up to it. So yeah, absolutely.
We worked around all that, and we finally made it happen. So that was definitely a good thing that we finally made that happen. And you know, and I think Andrew and I have talked about this. We also, because we have an episode coming out too, talking about cult anatomy. I think we're planning on doing one. We haven't done it yet, but we're going to start talking about what we're going to do, and that it'll make us do it, right? Which is, we also want to do an episode explaining what human trafficking is. And I say that because I think both Andrew and I had a somewhat narrow view of what human trafficking really was. And we have learned a lot since doing this podcast about it. It covers a much broader spectrum than we were aware of, which, you know, it's good. It's good for us to be learning that. And we would like to help educate our audience as well. So I think we're going to be working on that episode in the near future. You know what?
Suzanne opened up the episode by saying slavery was abolished in 17, whatever it was. And she says it was not. And so what she's referring to is slavery is very much alive today. It's not about ethnicity. It's not about, you know, your color of your skin. Modern day slavery is alive and well, and not just in the United States, but of course all over the world. Yeah, please come forward. Besides the cultimatum anatomy that we did record, we just have to put some touches to it. We do have we have a new episode type thing coming out where I think we mentioned this. We are going to be watching cult documentaries and I guess maybe human trafficking documentaries at some point. Yeah. And we're going to be reviewing them. We're going to be watching them and we watched one. Melody and I just watched something. We can tell them what it was. It was the Daughters of the Cult, which, by the way, I don't want to get too much off topic, but that was a very big story back in the 90s. And I don't know where I was because I remember the 4 p.m. shootings. We should save this for that. Yeah. We're gonna do that next. But that cult was huge. Yeah. And it went on for 30 years and they're still alive and well. Yeah. So we'll save that for that thing.
Thanks, Suzanne, for coming on the show and for having the bravery to share her story with us. And we want to thank all of you as well for tuning into Cultimatum. Your support is always greatly appreciated. We just ask that you take a moment to rate, review the podcast on platforms such as Apple and Spotify. And once again, on Spotify, you can review or leave comments on each individual episode. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
You can also show your support by joining our Facebook group under the name Cultimatum Podcast.
And you can also find us on additional social media platforms, including Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube, and now Threads.
If you have a human trafficking experience or cult story and you share it, please contact us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And ex-cult members looking for any additional support can consider joining the Cult Escape and Recovery group on Facebook. And I'm going to give Suzanne's group another plug here as well. And if you're looking for additional support with being a human trafficking survivor, you can feel free to join Suzanne's group, which is Modern Day Slavery Creating Awareness USA.
And if you're interested in learning more or hearing more from me, you can find me on my other podcast, Anonymous Andrew, Life and the Choices We Make. And I'm well into my season 3, and I have some really interesting episodes coming up. So check me out there. And
absolutely. Yep. And
yes,
as always,
Anonymous Andrew, Life and the Choices We Make.
Yes. And you can find that on all the same platforms that you find Cultimatum on. And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you're not alone.